Hey guys, welcome to Mild Moments History. Tonight, you're not in your bed. You're in a one-room cottage in 1325, and something just dripped onto your forehead from the thatched roof. You think medieval people were simple. They were inventing fireproof bags while you were asleep. You think they smelled bad? They were using cabbage as ice packs before hospitals even existed. You think survival was basic. You haven't tried keeping a fire alive with wet moss and frozen fingers. So before you get comfortable, take a deep breath. And if you like these strange, sleepy walks into the past, maybe hit subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now dim the lights. Let the fan hum. Tonight, you'll learn the kind of knowledge you only care about when your world turns dark and cold. You're not safe, but you have a pouch of glowing embers, a handful of rushes, and a roof that leaks slower than the one next door. You'll be fine. Probably. You wake up before the sun, not because you want to, but because your shoulder hurts. The straw mattress shifted in the night, and now you're half on dirt, half on moldy thatch, and fully regretting ever letting the goat sleep that close to your head. The roof leaks. It always leaks. A soft drop hits your blanket with perfect rhythm. You blink. It's still dark, but the cold is very awake. There's one room. No windows. Just a few wooden planks wedged into the walls to keep the wind from arguing with your bones. Your mother is still asleep in the corner. Or praying. It's hard to tell. Your little brother mumbles something and kicks you in the shin. You can smell everything. The goat. The wet wool cloak. The faint sourness of yesterday's cabbage stew. But there's smoke, too, soft and bitter drifting from the hearth where the coals are still alive. That's good. That's very good. Because if the fire's still breathing, so are you. Breakfast isn't ready. Because there's no such thing. You shuffle toward the hearth. Stepping over the chicken, it clucks softly in protest, like it pays rent. You don't have bread. The last loaf molded a week ago and was turned into porridge. You don't have milk. The cow dried up. And the neighbor's goat bit your uncle. What you do have is a pot. Inside, 3 turnips, a bone that used to be part of a pig, and something green that might have been cabbage, or might have been floor sweepings. You don't ask. You stir. You sniff. You eat. The warmth spreads slowly, like hope. Your stomach settles. Not full, but quiet. This is what eating means here. Not delight. Not choice. Just survival in a bowl. You can't read, but you know which days to fast. And you know that if the priest says the frost came because someone broke Lent, then someone definitely did. The church bell rings far away. It's the only sound that travels through snow like that. A low, metal call reminding you what day it is and who's watching. You have a charm around your neck. A bit of bone. Tied with string. The midwife gave it to you when your sister fell ill. She said it keeps fevers away. It didn't work. But you wear it anyway. Just in case. You've seen your neighbors hang herbs above doorways, mumble Latin over cabbages, and sprinkle ash in a circle when babies cry too much. Is it superstition? Or is it the only medicine left when the real kind doesn't come? The cold hasn't peaked yet. That's what your father says. He says the worst nights always come after the first thaw, like winter doesn't want to leave politely. You believe him. Because yesterday, old Marjorie's house burned down. She tried to relight her fire with wet moss and forgot the vent. Now her family sleeps in the pig pen. The pigs don't mind. But you do. You check your fire. Gently poke the coals. The glow is there, hiding under the ash. Like a secret. You feed it twigs. Whisper to it. Tonight, you'll need that fire. Because the wind is rising again. And you heard the mice chewing too close to the walls. And someone said the wolves are getting braver. You don't know what's coming. But you know this? You'd better remember everything. Because forgetting gets you killed. You didn't pack food. You packed fire. That's what mattered. Not bread. Not dried berries. Not even the smoked sausage tied to the rafter, but the ember. The ember came first. Always. You crouch by the hearth in the morning light. Knees stiff from the cold. Fingers sore. The fire looks dead. But you know better. Beneath the gray crust of ash, something still glows. You dig gently. A soft breath. And yes, there it is. The faintest pulse of red. A heart-beating coal. You don't speak. No one does when you do this. You just work. You pull out the small leather pouch, the one your uncle gave you, after the first time you lost the fire and had to beg down the road like a fool. Inside the pouch is a curl of dried moss, soft like old bread, and smelling faintly of smoke and wool. You wrap the ember inside. Carefully. Gently. Reverently. Sometimes you use fungus. Sometimes punkwood. Sometimes linen dipped in animal fat and saltpeter. If you're lucky. But moss is what you have today. It cradles the ember like it understands. The ember doesn't blaze. It smolders. Quiet. Steady. Like you. It doesn't complain. It waits. You tuck the bundle into a horn hollowed. Dark. Warm from being inside your coat all night. You wrap it in a bit of wool. Then cloth. Then leather. You tie it tight. And now you carry it close. You don't feel its warmth. Not through all the layers. But you know it's there. And that's enough. You leave home. The wind bites. Your feet sink into cold mud. The sky is too pale for comfort. But it doesn't matter. You have fire in your pocket. You're safe. Well, safer. You walk for hours. Through bramble and frost and breath that curls in front of you like fog. Your stomach grumbles. You chew on dried root. You ignore the ache in your legs. The ember doesn't care about any of that. It just waits. By midday, you reach the clearing. You're alone. The trees whisper. The sky darkens. But you kneel like you've done 100 times before. You unwrap the pouch. Slowly. Moss smells stronger now. damp and smoky and alive. You breathe in, then blow. Gently, the moss darkens, then glows. Then a flicker, a thread of smoke, a promise. You whisper to it. Maybe you pray. The smoke thickens. A curl of orange. You press dried grass around it. Then twigs. Then a cracked branch. The flame hesitates, then catches. And just like that, you've built something from almost nothing. This is what survival looks like. Not grand. Not glorious. Just warm. The fire crackles. You sit back. Your hands thaw. Your face softens. You're no longer a traveler. You're a firekeeper. And if someone passes by someone cold, tired, trembling, you'll share the ember. Because someone once shared it with you. And because no one survives long without it. Fire is more than heat. It's memory. It's home in your hands. You hear the knock before the sun fully rises. 3 short taps. Then a pause. Then one more. It's the kind of knock that doesn't want to wake the whole house, just the one who knows what it means. You're already up. You've been up since the fire coughed in its sleep. Nearly giving up. You stirred the ash with a stick. Whispered to the red core like it was a baby that needed to be rocked. It held on. Now you cross the cold floor. Open the wooden door with a grunt. And there she is. Old Tom's daughter. Wrapped in a damp wool shawl. Cheeks red from crying or cold or both. She doesn't say it. She doesn't have to. You can smell it. The smoke on her is wrong, sharp and short, like something that died in the night. Their fire went out. She holds a little pot in both hands. Clay. Chipped. Lined with soot. You recognize it. You've used it before. You nod. No words. Just fire. You kneel by your hearth. The coals are shy but obedient. You breathe slow. Peel back the moss you've tucked away for yourself. Press it gently into her pot with the same care you'd give an egg in winter. You sprinkle dry lint around it. You add a twist of last season's hay. Then you lift the pot into her hands like passing a sleeping child. She holds it close to her chest. Like it's holy. And maybe it is. Thank you, she whispers. Voice like frost. You nod again. No one ever says much during a fire giving. It's too fragile a thing for loud voices. You watch her disappear down the road. Feet crunching over frost. Pot smoking faintly like a trail of incense. You know, she'll run the last bit. You know, Tom will be waiting with kindling ready. Hands trembling with both age and hunger. You know, the fire will take. If she doesn't drop it. If she does, she'll be back. And you'll give her your last ember. Because that's what neighbors are for. Not bread. Not prayer. Fire. You close the door. Sit back by your hearth. The coals blink slowly, like old eyes still watching. You add a stick. You whisper again. You wait. You didn't kill the pig for flavor. You killed it so you could see February. The days are short now. The kind of cold that stings your teeth has moved in and made itself comfortable. You can feel it in the floorboards, in your sleeves, in the way no one laughs very loud anymore. So you hang the meat, not over the fire, not where it'll cook too fast. Turn slick. Drip grease into the soup pot. You hang it behind the smoke, high in the rafters, tied with twine made from last year's flax and your aunt's best knots. You climb the ladder slowly. The heat of the fire rises, but not all the way. Up here, it's smoke. Cool. Gentle. Steady. Not the thick billowing kind. This is drifting smoke. It wraps around the meat like it knows what's at stake. You check the ham with your fingers. It's tacky. Almost leathery. That's good. That means it's drying. That means it might last. Below you, the fire snaps. Someone stirs the stew. Someone coughs. You blink through the haze. And the rafter creaks as you shift your weight. It always creaks. You've stopped being afraid of that. You climb down. Your fingers smell like ash and fat. You glance back up. 3 cuts of pork. 1 rabbit. 2 birds. All hanging in your ceiling like quiet prayers. If you're lucky, they'll last. If not, you'll learn how hungry March can be. You sit by the fire, close enough for the smoke to sting, but not blind you. You watch it rise. You think about the neighbor who tried salting too early, and the dog that ran off with his last slab of meat. You think about the winter 3 years ago, the bad one. The one no one talks about out loud. And you keep feeding the fire. You don't need to taste the meat yet. You just need it to survive long enough to matter. The smell lives in your clothes now. It lingers in your hair, settles in the corners of the room, and clings to your blanket like it's part of the weave. Smoke, salt, and something darker like old wood and last chances. You're used to it. You even find comfort in it. Because up there, above your head, swinging gently with every gust through the thatch, is survival. You look up at the rafters. The meat hangs like sleeping bats, twisted strings holding slabs that were once fresh and pink, now brown and hardening. The edges curl. The fat glistens faintly in the firelight. It's not beautiful, but it's safe. You remember your cousin bragging once that his family smoked their meat with applewood. For flavor. You don't do that. You burn pine, spruce, whatever's dry and bitter and full of bite. Not because it tastes good, but because it keeps the flies away, because it burns hot, because it leaves behind a sting in the nose that means your dinner won't rot. Your house smells like smoke and hope and animal fat. Visitors wrinkle their noses. But visitors don't bring bread. You sit by the fire. Sometimes a drip of fat hisses into the flames. You watch it curl up as a ghost. Sometimes a piece falls and you rush to catch it before it hits the ground. That's dinner for 2 days. The meat gets darker each week. Harder. Tougher. You knock on a piece once, just to hear the thud. Still good. Still yours. And when you lie in bed at night, under the ticking roof, under the straw-stuffed mattress that used to itch more than it comforts, you breathe in, you smell the smoke, and you feel safer. Because in this place, in this season, in this century, meat doesn't mean luxury. It means you won't bury your brother this winter. You don't build a fence. You grow one. The wood you chop for fire is precious. Too precious to waste on posts and planks. So you walk to the hedgerow, a tangled green wall that you and your father have been weaving since the spring your shoes first fell apart. The trees there aren't tall. Not yet. They're wiry. Fast. Bendable like young arms. Hazel. Willow. Blackthorn. You cut them just enough not to kill, but to lean. You bend their backs to the earth, twist their limbs through each other. One branch holds the next. The next holds the next. It's not a fence. It's a braid. Your knife nicks your hand. Again. You suck the blood and keep weaving. By the end of the afternoon, your hands are scratched, your knees wet, your neck burned red by wind. But the wall is thicker, meaner, beautiful in a violent sort of way. Pigs won't pass through it. Neither will thieves. Or at least, not quietly. In the summer, birds will nest in it. In the fall, it'll give berries bitter, but edible. In the winter, it'll stand guard while you sleep. And next spring, you'll lay it again. The branches will grow sideways. New shoots will rise. The whole thing will twist tighter, bite deeper, look older than it is. You don't own stone. You don't have iron. But you have this, a wall that lives. And that's good enough. You run your fingers along the branches. Not straight. Never straight. They zigzag like they're trying to escape, but you wove them too tight for that. Some are scarred where your knife slipped last season. Others have thorns now. Big ones. The kind that draw blood from curious hands and hungry mouths. You don't mind. That's the point. The hedge isn't just a wall. It's a warning. And every year, it grows thicker, sharper, older. You've lived here your whole life. But the hedge has changed more than you have. It used to be gaps and hope. Now it's armor. When the wind howls at night, the hedge hums. Not a song. More like teeth. Birds love it. Bees dance through it in summer. Mice try to live in it, but the owl that lives nearby disagrees. It holds the hill, keeps the dirt from sliding into the stream. It holds your goats, too. Most of the time. One morning, you wake to find the neighbor's boy crying outside it. He tried to climb through. The hedge won. You patch the spot with a branch from the coppice woodpile. It's already half grown. It bends like it knows what to do. You whisper to it. Not words. Just habit. The hedge listens. It always does. And when winter comes, when wolves prowl and snow drifts and footsteps vanish by morning, the hedge stays, breathing, watching, waiting. Like you press your hand against the clay wall. It's cool. Cooler than the air. Cooler than your forehead after hours in the sun. And it's been that way since you were born. Clay doesn't care about seasons. It remembers cold. Holds it. Same with heat. You learned that young, watching your grandmother wrap butter in a damp cloth and tuck it inside a clay pot buried half deep in the corner of the kitchen. The cloth would dry, but the pot stayed cool. Cool enough to keep milk from turning sour before dinner. Cool enough to keep the smell of fish from spreading. Cool enough to matter. You touch the pot now. Still damp. Still cold. Still working. Sometimes you soak unglazed jugs in water before setting them on the shelf. Evaporation, they say. Though you never learned the word, you just knew it worked. In winter, the same walls hold warmth. You heat a brick by the fire, wrap it in cloth, and slide it under the bed. You don't sleep warm, but you don't wake up frozen. On travel days, you pack warm stew in a clay pot, nest it in straw, and tie it tight. By midday, it's still warm. Not hot, but warm enough to remember fire. You've cracked a few. Some split clean down the side. Others just gave up. But when they don't break, they carry you through. You don't think of clay as special? It's everywhere. In your walls, your bowls, your floors. But maybe that's what makes it magic. It asks for nothing and gives everything it can. Without shouting, without shine, just steady silence, like the earth itself. You don't trust the sun, not with milk, not with butter, not with anything you'd like to still eat tomorrow. So you learn to hide things. The north wall of your cottage is always cooler. It sees no sunlight. It drinks shade like water. That's where you stack the stones. Heavy. Flat. You build them right into the wall, 3 shelves. Smooth from years of use. You call it the cold corner. Everyone does. In the early morning, you place the milk there. Still warm from the goat. Still frothy. With bits of hay floating near the rim. You cover the jug with a wet cloth. Not clean, nothing ever is, but soaked from the rain barrel. As it dries, the cloth pulls heat from the jar. You don't know the science. You just know it feels cold to the touch by noon. Sometimes you bury the butter a little deeper, down near the packed earth floor. Sometimes you set the cheese between 2 jugs and turn them twice a day. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of quiet dance between spoilage and stubbornness. The shelves smell like stone and old milk. Not bad, just sharp. Like survival. In summer, you dampen the stones themselves. In winter, you just hope the cat doesn't knock anything over. Once, you dropped a full jug. The crack was louder than thunder. You cried. Then you scooped up what you could and salted it into something sour. That's how you learn. You don't have ice. You don't have cold boxes or glowing machines. But you have patience. You have shadow. And you have a quiet kind of clever that no one taught you. Because it was always there. Like the chill under the shelf. Like the milk that didn't turn. Like the part of you that knows nothing stays fresh for long. But some things can last a little longer. If you learn where to place them. You don't have Teflon. You have a rock. And time. And a pot that squeaks when you touch it the wrong way. The clay is rough. Grainy. Like sand pressed into shape and told to behave. And if you don't do something about it, your stew will stick. And burn. And stay. So you polish? Not once. Not quickly. But over hours, days. Sometimes before the pot ever meets fire. You sit by the door. In the light that barely reaches through the thatch. You hold the pot in your lap. You take a smooth stone, the one your aunt swore by, and begin to rub. In circles. In lines. In every direction your hand can reach. It's not graceful. It's not poetic. It's just necessary. Sometimes you use bone. Sometimes hardwood. Once, a rounded bit of glass you found near the stream. Whatever slides better than your skin. The surface begins to shine, not like metal, but like stone after rain. That's when you know it's ready. If you have fat, and that's a big if you rub it in, then you heat it. Just enough to seal it. To soak it in. The pot smokes, but doesn't complain. Later, when you cook, the soup still sticks, but not as much. And it cleans easier. And the taste doesn't carry from one meal to the next. People notice. Your cousin grumbles that his porridge tastes like yesterday's fish. Yours doesn't. Because you rubbed until your shoulders ached. Because you cared when no one else could. The pot sits by the fire now. Scuffed. Blackened. But loyal. And tomorrow, you'll do it again. Because there's no shortcut. Only hands and heat and the quiet promise of a meal that won't betray you. You smear fat on the inside of the pot. Not butter. That's for the bread you don't have. Not oil. That's for the rich. This is drippings. Bacon. If you're lucky. Mutton. If you're not, scraped from the pan, saved in a cracked jar, and soft as wax near the fire. You dip your fingers in. The smell is strong, sharp, smoky, a little sour. You don't flinch. You've done this before. You rub the fat into the clay like it's a secret. Into the pores. Into the tiny cracks you can't see but know are there. The pot drinks it in. Greedy. Quiet. Grateful. Then you heat it. Slow. Gentle. The pot doesn't bubble, it hums. And the fat bakes into the walls, sealing them like a whispered promise. Later, when you cook, the stew still clings, but only a little. And when you scrape it clean, There's less shame in the effort, less regret in the burn. Sometimes you add ash. Yes, ash from the hearth. Sifted fine. Mix it with fat. Make a paste. And spread it thin. It hardens. Like armor. Like memory. It doesn't look clean, but it works. You hand the pot to your cousin. He frowns. Rubs a thumb across the surface. It's still rough, he says. You nod. Because so are you. And you both still hold heat just fine. You can't see the path. The mist came early, thicker than usual, curling around your knees like wet wool. The forest is quiet. Too quiet. No stars. No sun. No shadows to follow. So you listen. There. A sound. Distant. Hollow. A bell. Not loud, not like the ones they ring on holy days, but steady. 1. 2. Pause. Then again. You turn your head. Follow it. Your feet sink into mud. A branch snaps underfoot. You whisper a curse to no one. The bell continues. It's from the chapel. Or maybe the smithy. You can't tell yet, but it's homeward. You pass a pasture. Can't see the sheep. But you hear them. Bells on their necks. Clinking softly as they move through the mist like ghosts. You smile. You know that sound. You're near Old Bram's flock, which means you're close. Closer than you feared. You keep walking. A dog barks. Faint and far. 3 barks. Then silence. That's Mary's dog. He hates everything. You must be very close now. In the trees. Someone once hung a pan from a rope, an old trick. When the wind blows just right, it clatters. Trail marker. Warning. Maybe both. You hear it now. A soft clang. Like a forgotten spoon tumbling down the years. And there beneath it all the tavern. You can't see it. But you hear laughter. Music. Mugs on wood. A voice raised in song. That's how you find your way. Not with a map. Not with stars. With sound. The kind that wraps around your ribs and says, keep walking. You're not lost. Not yet. You walk with a stick. Not just for balance. Not just to prod at puddles or chase off dogs. You walk with it because sometimes the world disappears. Into fog. Into trees. Into silence so deep. Your own footsteps feel borrowed. So you stop. And you knock. Once. Twice. The sound snaps forward, then returns. Soft. Late. Like it had to think about it. Echo. You take a breath. You knock again. Shorter delay this time. The trees are closer. You're in the narrows now. You don't remember who taught you this. Maybe your father. Maybe fear. But it saved you more times than prayer ever did. You use your voice? 2. A soft hoe. not a shout that would be rude. Just enough for the land to notice. Sometimes you clap. Sometimes you bang the stick on stone. The echoes change stretch, stutter, vanish. That tells you something. No hecho. Open space ahead. Fast echo. Rock wall. Or house. Or trouble. In some places, they hang chimes. Bones. Pots. Bits of iron. When the wind stirs them, you know where you are or where not to go. One valley has a drum tied to a stump. You hit it once on the way in. If you hear it again when you're not near it, you walk faster. Echo is memory. It tells you where you've been and warns you what forgot to move. You grip your stick. Knock once more. The sound comes back. Calm and clear. Good. Keep walking. The forest remembers you. You don't have toothpaste. You have ashes. Every morning, you take a pinch from the hearth, the fine black dust left behind when the fire dies gently. You mix it with a bit of salt. Maybe a crushed mint leaf if you're lucky. Or rosemary if the garden remembered to grow. You dip your finger in, rub it against your teeth. Back and forth. Not hard. Just enough. It feels like chewing gravel. Tastes like burnt wood and old prayers. But it works. Mostly. Sometimes you use a twig. Sometimes a rag tied around the twig. Once, you tried a feather. Never again. You spit into the corner. The black smear on the floor says done better than any clock ever could. You breathe out. The air doesn't smell good, but it doesn't smell like rot. That's enough. You've seen what happens to people who don't bother. Teeth that blacken. Ashe. Vanish. Jaws that swell. Breath that clears a room faster than a torch. You don't want that. You want to talk to someone without making them flinch. You want to chew with both sides of your mouth. You want to grow old with all your teeth, or at least enough to eat turnips without crying. Charcoal doesn't make your smile pretty. It makes it possible. And in this century, that's more than enough. You lean close to speak, and they don't pull away. That's a small victory. You take it. Your breath isn't sweet, nothing is. Not really. But it doesn't sting eyes. Doesn't turn heads. And that means you're doing better than most. You rub ash on your teeth each morning. But it's not just the charcoal. You chew mint when you can find it. A sprig behind the ear. A leaf under the tongue. Sometimes rosemary, if it hasn't dried to dust. You rinse with vinegar once a week. Burns like regret. But it helps? Probably. No one taught you this. It's not in books. It's in looks the kind people give when someone opens their mouth and ruins a room. You remember your uncle. You loved him. But his breath could stop a prayer. You don't want that legacy. So you care. In quiet ways. You even boiled sage once. Let the steam rise. Breathed it deep. Did it work? You don't know. But it felt like trying. And trying matters, because there's no soap, no mint paste in bright tubes, no smile ads painted on wagon sides. Just your fingers, your breath, your hope that when you whisper near someone's ear, they'll lean in, not away. You don't own stone. You don't own brick. But you have mud. You have sticks. You have hands that know how to layer one onto the other until they become shelter. It starts with wattle-thin branches, woven like baskets, tied between upright posts. They creak when the wind pushes. They bend like tired knees. But they hold. Then comes the daub, a mix of clay, straw, and dung, yes. Dung slapped on by hand, packed tight with fingers numb from cold. It squelches. It stinks. It sticks. You smear it until the walls thicken, until the light doesn't leak through, until the house no longer feels like just an idea. It feels like a skin. Sometimes it cracks. The daub dries, shrinks, pulls back like it's thinking twice. You patch it. Again. And again. Because a wall that breathes is better than one that breaks. In the corners, spiders build faster than you do. You leave them. They eat worse things. The roof is thatch. Golden when new. Gray when old. Heavy with rain. Alive with mice. And yet, when the wind howls and the rain claws sideways, you're still dry. Mostly. You run your fingers along the wall before bed. It's cool. Soft in places. A little crumbly. But it's yours. And it hasn't fallen in. And that's enough. Because this isn't just a house. It's proof. That dirt, straw, and hope, when held together long enough, can become home. It smells like everything. Wet wool, old stew, ash, goat. The walls hold it all. Not like secrets, more like breath. They've absorbed every meal, every winter, every damp sock hung too close to the hearth. You stopped noticing long ago. But when visitors come, if they ever come, they wrinkle their noses before sitting. You pretend not to see it. They pretend not to mind. And yet, the walls stay. Through rain, through frost, through that one storm that tore half the village roofs away. Yours held. It groaned. Sure. It leaked. Yes. But it stood. You patched it with more daub, more straw, more whatever the goat hadn't eaten. You pressed it in with the heel of your hand, smoothed it with a flat stone, whispered to it, maybe. Because when you live inside something made by hand, you talk to it sometimes. It listens. The cracks in the corner, you fill them with moss. The draft near the door, you shove an old cloak into the gap. It's not perfect. It's not warm. But it's not falling down. You know people with better homes. Stone walls, tiled roofs. They complain about cold just the same. So you sit by the fire, Let the smoke rise. Let it settle into the thatch, into your hair, into the air between you and sleep. Your house has a smell, but it also has a spine. And for now, so do you. You don't sleep on feathers. You sleep on straw, and not the clean kind. The sack sags in the middle, like a tired sigh. It smells faintly of cabbage, not cooked fresh. Green, sharp, almost like something you'd eat if you weren't already lying on it. That's because you packed it with herbs. Not for beauty. For defense. You've learned what plain straw attracts. Fleas. Lisa. Worse. So you mix in wormwood, pennyroyal, lavender, if you can trade for it. A handful here, a sprig there, crushed between your palms before stuffing. Sharp enough to sting the nose, strong enough to send the crawlies packing. You lie down. The mattress rustles like dry leaves. Bits of stem poke through the linen. You shift. They shift back. It's not comfortable, but it's safer. You add new herbs every week. Not because you want to, because you have to. The scent fades. The bugs return. The war continues. Sometimes you dream of clean sheets. You don't know what they feel like, but the dream smells like rosemary and no regrets. Your brother complains about the itch. You remind him of last spring, when the bed went plain for 2 weeks. You both remember the bites, and the scratching, and the way even the cat refused to nap near it. So now, your bed smells like a garden with something to prove. Like a salad no one wants to eat. But you sleep, and you don't wake up bleeding. And that, in this world, is luxury. You tuck a sprig of rosemary into the corner of your bedding. Not because it's pretty, not because someone told you to, but because last time you forgot. You woke up itching behind your ears. The scent rises as your body warms the straw. Earthy. Sharp. A little bitter. Not sweet, never sweet, but clean. Clean enough to pretend. Tonight, it's rosemary. Last week, it was thyme. Once, it was mint, but that made your eyes sting. So you stopped. You keep the herbs near your pillow. Sometimes under it. Sometimes in little bundles hung from the rafter above your head. They say it keeps nightmares away. They say it keeps rats out. They say a lot of things. You just know the room smells less like goat. That's good enough. The dried leaves crumble in your hands. You brush them off the blanket. They settle into the straw, joining hundreds that came before. Your mother adds mugwort to the hearth ashes. Your sister ties lavender to the cradle. Your aunt once buried garlic under the threshold. Everyone has their own spell, their own version of please. Not tonight. You lie still. You breathe. You try not to move too much, or the stems will poke your ribs again. The wind howls outside. You pull the wool blanket tighter. The rosemary crumbles more, but the smell lingers. And so does your hope that tonight you'll sleep deep. That tonight, nothing will bite. That tonight, the herbs will remember their promises. You touch the stone shelf in the corner of the room. Cold. Always cold. Even in summer. Even after a fire's been burning all day. It holds its chill like a secret. You don't ask why. You just use it. A clay pot rests on the stone, covered in damp cloth. Inside cheese, wrapped tight. Next to it, a crock of butter, sunk low so the cat won't see it. They sit quiet, like animals hiding from heat. Above the shelf is a small hole in the wall. Not a window, just an opening. Always shaded. Always turned away from the sun. The breeze through it kisses the stone. That's what keeps the shelf honest. You remember your grandfather placing a single egg there every morning, muttering under his breath as if the stone might judge him. You laughed once. Then your milk spoiled in the pantry, and you stopped laughing. Now you place things gently. Not just food, sometimes herbs. Sometimes ointments that go sour in the heat. Sometimes letters, if they ever arrive, to keep the wax from melting. On bad days, when your throat burns and your skin won't cool, you lie down beside the shelf. Not on it. It's too small but close enough. The stone draws heat from your body like sorrow from your chest. It doesn't say anything. It doesn't change. But you always feel better. The stone is more reliable than people. It doesn't forget. It doesn't grow warm unless you make it. In a world where everything spoils, softens, turns, this one thing stays cold. And that, somehow, is comfort. You check the butter before the sun gets too high. Because by midday, even shadows sweat. The crock sits in the corner north wall. Lowest shelf. Wrapped in 2 layers of linen soaked in well water. The linen is cold now. Cool. At least. You press your fingers into it and feel the dampness. Still holding? You unwrap it like a gift you hope didn't melt. The butter underneath is soft, but not soupy. Still golden. Still alive. You exhale. Not relief, just habit. You've done this every day since the spring thaw. When the weather turns mean, you add a clay bowl on top, flipped like a lid. Sometimes you bury the whole crock in sand. Sometimes you float it in the trough out back. Once, in desperation, you dropped it in the well tied to a rope, hoping the depth would save it. It didn't. Now you stick to cloth and shadow. 2 things you can control. You change the water in the bucket twice a day. You whisper curses at the heat. You watch the butter like a mother watches fever. You don't eat it much, not really. You use it in porridge, on festival bread, in ointment when the baby's skin cracks from the wind. But it's not about eating. It's about holding on, proving that just because the world burns, you can still make something soft last. You wrap the butter again. Tight. Cool. It'll make it through today. Maybe. That's enough. You don't go to a doctor. You go to the garden. Your knee's been swollen since yesterday, stiff. Red, warm to the touch. So you reach for the cabbage. Not to eat. To heal. You pick the largest leaf? The outer kind, thick. Veined. A little torn at the edge. You rinse it in the bucket. Shake it once. Then press it against your skin. Cold. Sharp. The pain hisses for a second, then fades. Not gone, but dulled. As if the leaf whispered. I've felt worse. You wrap cloth around it to hold it in place. Sit still. Wait. The leaf draws out the heat. Or so they say. You don't know how, but you've seen it work on your brother's bruised shoulder, on your mother's aching feet, on the neighbor who cried without reason for days. Once, you warmed the leaf near the fire before placing it on a chest that wouldn't stop coughing. Steam rose. So did breath. You've heard of herbs that do more, of salves and salters and tinctures in tiny jars. But you don't have those. You have cabbage. And sometimes, that's enough. You check the leaf at sunset. It's limp now. Warm. A little gray. You peel it off gently. The knee still hurts, but less. You nod. Reach for another leaf and press it down with the same quiet hope you always carry, that the earth still wants you well, even if it can only offer vegetables. You hesitate. The cabbage leaf in your hand is not fresh. The edges are soft. The smell stronger than usual. Not quite rot. But heading there, still. You smooth it out. Press it against the bruise on your hip. It sticks better when it's wilted. That's the secret no one tells you. Sometimes, the worse it smells, the better it works. You remember your aunt saying that once, while wrapping your uncle's swollen ankle in leaves so sour they made your eyes water. He walked the next day, limping. Sure, but walking. So you trust the stink? You wrap cloth over it. Sit still. Feel the warmth spreading under the cabbage. It's wet. It's weird. But it eases the throb. You've used better leaves. Crisper ones. Cool for morning shade. But you ran out 2 days ago. And the garden isn't giving any more this season. So now, you use what's left. The ones others would throw to the pigs. You peel back the cloth an hour later. The leaf has gone soft as mush. But your skin looks calmer. Less red. Less angry? You drop the used leaf into the fire. It hisses a tiny protest before turning to smoke. Tomorrow, you'll do it again. Maybe with a different leaf. Maybe the same one. If you're desperate enough. Because when it hurts, you reach for whatever's close. And sometimes, even the sour, the soft, the stinking, still heals. You don't light candles. You dip rushes. Candles are for churches, for nobles, for dreams. But you have reeds and fat. You cut them from the marsh, long and straight. Dry them in bundles tied to the rafters. When they're brittle enough to snap, they're ready. You peel the outer layer. Reveal the pith inside soft. Spongy. Perfect. Then you melt tallow. Not sweet-smelling wax, but kitchen drippings. Thick and yellow. You dip the rush into the fat. Pull it out. Let it cool. Then dip again. 1, 2, maybe 3 coats. That's all it takes. You light it at dusk. The flame flickers fast, hungry at first. Then calm. It hisses if the room's too damp. Crackles if the fat wasn't clean. You press it into a notch in a stick. Prop it near the wall. And for 10, maybe 20 minutes, you have light. Enough to see your hands. To sew a patch. To find the spoon you dropped. Then it sputters. Wavers. Dies. You make another. Some nights, you burn 6. Some nights, just 1. Depends on how long the chores take. Or how far the shadows stretch. You save the longest ones for visitors. Or storms. Or stories told in low voices when sleep won't come. The smell clings smoky. Oily. Like burnt broth. But it's yours. And it beats the dark. Because in a world without switches, without fireflies in glass, without magic in the walls, a rushlight is enough. A rushlight is hope. On a stick, you don't have hours. You have flames. A rushlight burns just long enough to matter and short enough to remind you you're running out. You know the timing by heart. 1 rush, thick with fat. About 20 minutes. A thinner one, maybe 15. If the air's damp, subtract 5. If there's wind, subtract more. You light one before chores. If it burns out before you're done, you're late. Simple. You light another while sewing and stop when it's halfway gone. That's your signal to rest your eyes. Another one before prayers. 1 more for tea. If you have tea, or just hot water and hope. Your brother once tried to mark time with notches on a stick. You smiled and lit a rush instead. It's not perfect, but it glows. And it's warm. And you can see just enough of the room to know it's still yours. Sometimes you let one burn all the way down, just to watch it. The light shrinks slowly. The shadow on the wall stretches longer than your arm. That's how you know night is moving in. That it's time to bank the fire. To close the door. To lie down. People talk about sundials. About water clocks. About stars. But stars can't fit in your palm. And water can freeze. And sundials are no use in the dark. So you light a rush. And when it's gone, you sleep. You walk to the edge of the marsh with a jar wrapped in cloth. It's early. Before the sun can melt what little cool the night left behind. The air smells of mud and frogs and something green that doesn't have a name. You kneel beside the water. Not the part that moves the still patch. Shaded by reeds. You reach in. Slow. Careful. It bites cold. That's good. You place the jar inside an old wicker basket, weighted with stones. Then you lower it into the water. Not all the way, just deep enough for the current to forget it. The cloth swells. The jar darkens. The boulder beside it says, "No foxes. No raccoons. No fingers." You tie the basket to a stick stuck in the mud. The knot is tight. You learned that lesson last summer. You stand. Shake your hands dry. Walk away. No one touches it. No one even asks. They know what the stick means. The butter will keep a few days longer this way. Maybe more. If the sun stays shy. If the marsh stays kind, you'll come back at dusk. Pull it out like a secret. Unwrap it in the kitchen. Scoop a bit onto stale bread. Taste salt and silence. And you'll say nothing. Because some things, like cool butter in a hot world, are better left undisturbed. You step into the cellar, and the air changes. Not just cooler, thicker. Like the dirt is breathing slowly in its sleep. The stairs creak. The stone under your feet stays damp. Even in August. And that's why you come here. Not for quiet. Not for solitude. But for cold. You keep the salted fish in a barrel near the far wall. Butter in crocks lined with wet cloth. Jugs of ale stacked beside root vegetables that haven't seen the sun in months. The walls drip sometimes. The corners grow soft with moss. But the food stays good longer than anywhere else. You touch a jar. The lid is slick. You smile. Above ground. The fire eats through wood and patience. But down here, time moves slower. Once, you stayed too long and forgot what warm air felt like. Your fingers stiffened. Your breath fogged. But the carrots didn't rot. And that, in the end, is what mattered. You don't understand how it works. You just know the deeper you go, the longer things live. Even you. You close the door behind you as you leave. The latch clicks. The darkness stays sealed, cool, and faithful. The earth holds what you give it. And sometimes, it gives it back. You soak the outer pot first. The clay drinks the water like it's been thirsty for days. Tiny bubbles rise, then vanish. You wait until the surface darkens. Heavy and cold. Inside the larger pot sits a smaller one, dry. Clean. Sealed. You place a pouch of cheese in the center. A bit of meat. A fig. If you're lucky, then you cover it with a flat stone and set the whole thing in the corner. Out of the sun. This is your fridge. You don't call it that. But that's what it is. The water in the outer layer begins to evaporate. And in doing so, it cools the air trapped inside. You learned this from no one. It just works. You check the pot with your wrist, like you would a fever. It's cooler than your skin. Still doing its job. You change the water daily. You don't let the lid sit too tight or mold will take its chance. On hotter days, you fan the outside with a bit of bark to help the air move. It doesn't make much difference, but it feels like effort. and effort keeps the food alive. This trick doesn't stop rot. It slows it. Enough for dinner to wait until dark. Enough to stop waste. Enough to feel like you've beaten summer. Just a little. You run a finger down the side of the pot. Wet. Cool. Steady. You don't have ice. You don't have miracles. But you have clay, water, and patience. And that's science. By another name. You crouch beside the hearth, knees crackling louder than the kindling. The fire is gone. Not dead, just hiding. You hope. You scrape away the ash, fingers blackening fast. Beneath it, a whisper of red. Barely there, flickering like doubt. You lean in. Not too close. You've burned your eyebrows before. And then, you breathe. Slow. Gentle. Like coaxing a child out from behind a door. The ember glows. Then fades. You try again. Deeper breath this time. The kind that tightens your chest and makes your lips sting. A curl of smoke. A hiss. You add a curl of bark dry. Brittle. Cracked like old skin. Then another breath. Then two. The glow returns. Not fire yet. But the idea of fire? A memory. Waiting. You feed it dry moss. A few splinters. A prayer. Though you don't say it out loud. One more breath. This one hurts. And then, flame. Tiny. Nervous. But there, you sit back. Lungs hot. Eyes watering. Your breath started this. Not flint. Not spark. Just breath. You never think of yourself as powerful. But today, you made fire with nothing but lungs and want. And that counts. You've never seen a lighter. But you know what makes flame. Not buttons. Not sparks at a flick. Just patience. And ash. And breath. The hearth looks dead. Cold gray crust over what used to be warmth. But you know better. You reach for the edge of the coal pile. Dig with fingers already stained black from yesterday. There's warmth under there. Not fire. But the idea of fire? You feel for softness a crumbly bit of charcoal. Still alive in its silence. You cradle it in a fold of moss. Wrap it like a baby. You blow. Gently. Then harder. A red eye opens. You breathe again. It brightens. You feed it a shaving of bark. Dry as old bones. It curls. Catches. Smokes. You don't smile, not yet. The ember is fickle. It needs attention. Like everything else that matters. In the corner is a bowl of ash you saved from last week, white. Fine. Soft. You sprinkle a pinch onto the coal. The ember glows brighter. Ash protects. Ash remembers. Someone once asked why you keep ash. You didn't answer. You just lit their fire for them when theirs died. You don't need tools. You don't need tricks. You just need lungs. A little dryness. A little memory. You make the fire rise. And for a few seconds, it's not the Middle Ages. It's not poverty. It's just you, breathing life into flame. You don't sit by the fire. You dance with it. Not a real dance. A slow shuffle. A lean in, lean back. Too close and your shins burn. Too far and your fingers freeze. So you shift. You stretch your legs toward the flame until the heat stings. Then you pull back. Let the cloth cool. Then forward again. This is warmth by rhythm, not luxury. Your hands hover over the edge of the pot. Palm down at first, then flipped, so the backs can feel it too. You warm one side of you, then twist to do the other. Sometimes you forget and toast your knees raw. The pain doesn't come right away. It waits, then bites deep. Your brother once scorched his boot leather. Didn't notice until the stitching cracked. You learn quick. Even the dog knows the distance. He curls at the edge of the rug, close enough to soak in comfort, far enough to keep his fur. The fire is not kind. It warms, but only if you respect it. You never face it fully. You angle your body like a question mark, like you're asking, "May I?" It never answers. But it burns slower when you're careful. You pull the blanket tighter. Let the heat creep in through layers. And when the log collapses in on itself, you don't flinch. You shift, because this isn't a fireplace. It's a teacher. And you've learned to stay warm. You have to listen. You don't sleep alone. Even when you want to. Even when the straw pokes your spine and the blanket smells like wet wool and tired feet. There's the dog, curled against your back. One of the goats, pressed against your knees. And if you're unlucky, the pig, snoring louder than your uncle ever did. You didn't invite them. They just came, drawn by the warmth, the shared body heat, the promise that maybe this night won't bite quite as hard. At first, it was strange, waking up with hooves in your ribs, fur in your mouth, a tail across your face like a rude curtain. But now it's comfort. Now it's survival. The dog keeps the rats away. The goat makes a decent footrest. The pig radiates heat like a breathing brick. You've learned to move in your sleep just enough to shift without waking the whole barnyard. You've learned to listen for the quiet snort that means the goat's too close to the fire. You've learned to reach out and feel if something is missing. Because silence isn't peace. It's worry. You once tried sleeping alone. Just for a night. You woke up shivering. And you never tried again. So now, you make room. You share space. You accept the smells, the weight, the odd sounds. Because in this life, a warm bed is made of more than blankets. Sometimes it has hooves. You press your back against the wooden stall. It's not much, a few planks and a prayer. But on the other side is warmth. The cow exhales, a long, slow breath that steams in the cold like mist from another world. You feel it drift through the gaps in the wood. You lean closer. It's not the kind of warmth that makes you sigh. It's the kind that keeps your fingers from going stiff. The kind that lets your lungs stay calm just a little longer. You sit there, wrapped in every scrap of cloth you own, listening to her chew, the soft shuffle of hooves on hay, the occasional wet blink, the twitch of an ear. She doesn't know you need her. Or maybe she does. Maybe that's why she hasn't moved away. You remember the winter 2 years ago? When the snow came sideways and didn't stop for 4 days. You slept in the stall then, head against her belly, hands curled under her chest where the warmth was deepest. You didn't dream. You just endured. The cowshed is quieter than the house. Less talk. More breath. Sometimes, when the night gets too cruel, you slip out of bed, barefoot and shivering, and sit beside her again. She never complains. Her breath smells of grass and patience. She blinks at you like time doesn't matter. And for a moment, wrapped in the warmth of a creature who never asked for anything more than hay and quiet, you believe you'll make it through one more winter. You don't get dressed. You layer. The tunic goes over the shirt. The second shirt goes over the first. And the coat, the one with more patches than fabric, goes on top of everything. Then the scarf. Then the hood. Then the second scarf, tied tighter. You don't ask if it matches. You ask if it traps warmth. You shove your feet into boots that barely fit anymore. Wool wrapped around your toes. Old cloth shoved near your heel. Not comfort. Just insulation. The sleeves itch. The seams tug. You can't bend at the waist without something pulling under your arm. But that's the price. You look like a bundle of laundry with legs. But at least you're not shivering. Yet. You step outside and the wind greets you like a slap. It searches for cracks in your armor. Down your collar. Through your sleeves. Under your hem. You press everything tighter. You keep walking. You're not warm. But you're not frozen. That's the game. You don't undress when you come inside. There's no point. The air inside isn't much kinder. You just loosen the scarf enough to breathe. At night, you sleep in half of it. Waking up is easier when you're already halfway wrapped. Someone once asked how many clothes you own. You said, one set. And it's all on you now. You haven't washed your clothes in weeks. Maybe longer. You don't remember? You stopped counting when the frost came. There's a layer of grime at your cuffs. Smoke clings to the sleeves. The knees are stiff with old mud. But you leave it all. Because warmth matters more than cleanliness. And washing means wet. And wet means cold. And cold, well, cold means trouble. You once tried to scrub your shirt in the stream. It froze before it dried. You wore it damp. Coughed for 6 days. So now, you leave the dirt. Let it pack into the fabric. Fill the spaces. Seal in what little heat your body gives. You air your clothes near the fire. Not too close, you've seen wool go up like straw, but close enough to let the smoke settle in. Smoke covers smell. Smoke keeps lice confused. Smoke is your cologne. People wrinkle their noses when you pass. You don't blame them. You just nod and keep walking. They'll be dirty too. Soon enough. In this life, soap is a luxury. Heat is not. You pick your battles. And if people think you're filthy, you let them. Because you're not trying to impress. You're trying to survive. You haven't touched cold water in days. Not with your full body. Not since the last time you tried and couldn't stop shaking after. You don't bathe in winter. Not unless you want to flirt with death. The stream is frozen. The well is glass. And even if you boiled enough water to fill a tub, you'd be naked in the cold for longer than your lungs could forgive. So you don't wash. Not properly. You wipe. You scrape. A cloth dipped in warm water for the face. A dry rub for the arms. Ash for the hands. You pretend it helps. Your skin itches sometimes. Sweat clings in places you don't talk about. But you stay warm. And warm means alive. Your grandmother used to say, "It's not the dirt that kills you. It's the chill that follows the rinse." You believed her after your cousin tried to wash his feet one January night. He didn't walk for a week. His toes turned gray. Now you wrap your filth like a blanket. Layer it with wool. Let it settle into your clothes like extra skin. If spring ever comes, you'll shed it. You'll wade into the stream. You'll soap and scrub and scrape until the water runs dark. But not now. Now. The grime keeps you safe. Now. The dirt is your shield. And you've never been cleaner. About what matters. You don't fluff your bed. You rake it. Each night before you sleep, you lift the blanket. Reach into the straw and shift it with your hands. Pull the matted bits to the edge. Move the dry parts to the middle. Shake out the stems stuck to your shirt. It's not comfort you seek. It's a truce. The straw isn't soft. It pokes. It rustles. It smells like the barn where it came from. But it's warm. Or at least less cold than dirt. You remember when the straw was new? Golden. Crackling. Fragrant. That lasted a week. Now it's flattened. Darkened. Laced with herbs that long lost their scent. You add more when you can. A handful stolen from the goat's pen. A bundle bought from the miller's boy in trade for 2 eggs. You know not to let it mold. So you lift it. Let it breathe. Turn it like soil. Shake out the damp. There's a mouse that lives somewhere near your head. You've never seen it. But you've heard it. Tiny feet on dry stalks. You let it be. You're both just trying to sleep. Sometimes you dream of feathers. Of beds that don't rustle when you turn. Of waking up without straw in your hair. But mostly, you dream of nothing. Because the straw, rough as it is, lets you sleep. And that's more than most You don't sleep through the night. No one does. Not if they want to wake up warm. The fire can't last on its own. It needs hands. It needs breath. It needs you. So someone always wakes. Sometimes it's your mother, stirring in the dark, feet bare, fingers fumbling for kindling. Sometimes it's you. Most nights, it's you. You sleep lightly, ears tuned for the sound of silence. That dangerous kind, when no crackle follows the wind. When it comes, you rise, quiet. Careful! Cold. You cross the floor, touch the ashes. Still warm. Maybe, if you're lucky, you dig for embers. The last red crumbs of yesterday's fire. Feed them twigs. Breathe. Always breathe. The flame returns slowly, shyly, like it knows it wasn't supposed to die. You watch it grow. Then you go back to bed. But you don't sleep? Not right away. Your eyes adjust to the dark again. Your body trembles from leaving warmth. And by the time you begin to drift, someone else rises. You all take turns. No schedule. No rules. Just instinct. Because letting the fire die means waking to frost on your blanket. Means water that won't pour. Means breath that hurts. You don't mind the broken sleep. It's the price. For light. For safety. For morning, you've learned how to breathe in winter. Not through your mouth. Not fast. Not deep. Just enough. Just through the nose. The air outside is a blade sharp. Invisible. Waiting. Take it in too quickly, and your chest burns. Too deeply. And the cold settles into your lungs like wet cloth. So you breathe small, soft, controlled. You pull your scarf over your mouth. Wrap it once more, even if it stings your ears. You speak less. Let your breath warm the space between you and the wool. Let it build a little pocket of survival. Your father used to cough so hard in winter. The whole house echoed with it. He'd spit into the fire. Say nothing. Keep breathing wrong. Now he breathes like you. Narrow. Measured. Low to the ground. Like a creature that's been hunted too many times. When you lie in bed, you curl into yourself. Hands under arms. Blanket over face. You breathe your own warmth back into your chest. It smells like sleep and salt and survival. Some say steam from the breath means strength. You know better. It means your body's giving away heat. So you keep it in. Breath is currency here. You spend it carefully. And only when you must. Because out here, in a world of frozen windows and silent mornings, even the way you inhale decides if you'll make it to spring. You eat for warmth, not for taste, not for joy. Just fuel. Dinner is thick tonight. Barley. Onions. A bit of lard stirred in until the pot sighed. You spoon it slowly. letting the heat coat your throat. It sticks to your ribs. That's the point. You don't stop when you're full. You stop when you feel heavy. When your belly glows warmer than your hands. When you know that this meal will burn all night inside you. You scrape the pot clean. Run your finger around the edge for the last bit of grease. Nothing wasted. Afterward, you don't move much. Just curl into yourself by the fire. The food inside you pulsing like an ember under your skin. It's your second coat. One you wear from the inside out. No seams. No stitching. Just calories and quiet. You've eaten this meal 100 times. You'll eat it 100 more. But on nights like this, when the wind howls and the shutters rattle, you're grateful for every thick blambita. Because out there, people are cold. But in here in you, the fire still burns. You choose the flattest stone from beside the fire. Not too heavy. Not cracked. One that's held heat before. You brush off the ash. Test it with your fingertips. Hot, but not burning. It'll do. You wrap it in an old bit of cloth. Then another. It hisses faintly as the air cools its skin. But the heat stays inside. You lift the mattress of straw. Not all the way. Just enough. And slide the bundle underneath. Right near where your back will lie. You pat it once. Like thanking a friend. Then settle in. At first, it's too warm. You shift. You squirm. The heat blooms up your spine. But then it fades to perfect. Not hot. Not cold. Just gentle. It lasts maybe an hour. 2. If you don't move much, by morning, it's cool again. But by then, so is the world, and you're already upright. Sometimes you heat 2 stones. One for you. One for the child who kicks his blanket off every night. Sometimes 3. When your mother's knees ache louder than the wind. You've tried warming bricks, bones, even pots filled with coals. But stones hold quiet. Stones don't spill. Stones remember. You wrap yourself tighter. Feel the warmth press up through the straw. And think, this is your hearth now. Small. Hidden. Yours. A fire that sleeps beneath you. You don't have a basket. You have a pit of ash. When the hen lays, and if you're lucky, she does. You take the egg carefully, still warm, and bury it, right in the cold ashes from the hearth. Not where the embers live. Just the quiet gray fluff at the edge. The ash keeps it dry, keeps the shell from sweating, keeps hands and pests from seeing it. You mark the spot with a stick, or a stone, or nothing, and trust your feet to remember. The egg stays good for days, weeks, maybe longer if the air stays kind. Sometimes you find one you forgot. Shake it near your ear. No slosh. Still safe. A gift from your past self. You never stack them. That's how they crack. One egg wasted is a sin. Two is a story. You've tried storing them in straw. Too warm. In a jar of brine? You've heard of that. But Ash is free and patient. So each morning, you check your spots. Brush the ash aside with reverent fingers. Hold the egg up to the light. And smile. Because survival isn't always fire and blood and sweat. Sometimes it's a smooth shell, warm in your palm, and a secret buried in gray dust. You check your feet before anything else. Before your breath. Before your belly. Because if your feet fail, the rest of you follows. You sit on the stool near the fire. Pull off the boots slowly, like peeling bark from a tired tree. They smell like leather and regret. Your socks are damp. Of course they are. Nothing stays dry in this season. The snow melts in your boots, then freezes again by dusk. You peel the cloth away. Press your thumbs into the soles. Sorry. But no cracks. No bleeding. Not today. You rub them with a scrap of wool. Then dust them with ash, not clean. But dry. Dry is enough. Your uncle lost 3 toes to damp. He didn't complain. He just limped quieter each year. You remember. So now, you change your wrappings twice a day. Hang them near the fire on a stick, turning them like meat. Sleep with them under your blanket, because warm cloth in the morning feels like a spell. You stuff moss in the gaps of your boots. Sometimes wool. Sometimes straw. You don't care what it is, as long as it keeps the wet out. You've walked miles through cold so sharp it bit your heels. But you never stop moving, because stopping means soaking. Soaking means freezing. Freezing means goodbye. You flex your toes one more time. Still yours. You nod. Wrap them again, and step out into the slush. Dry feet. Dry life. You don't cut wood in winter. You burn it. The cutting comes months before, when the sun still rises early, when the grass is long, when your arms haven't yet forgotten how to swing an axe. You drag the logs out of the forest, sap still bleeding from the bark. You split them until your hands blister, then split them smaller. You stack them not in piles, but in patterns. Air must pass through. Rain must run off. Otherwise, you'll curse yourself in December. You lean each piece just so, like placing bricks in a wall made of patience. Too close, and they mold. Too far, and the pile falls. You cover the top with thatch. Not tight, just enough to keep off the worst of the sky. And then you wait. For heat. For wind. For time to do what you can't. Each week, you knock a log against your boot. Listen for the sound. Dry wood sings. Wet wood thuds. You bring the dry ones in. Bit by bit. Stack them by the hearth, low enough to reach in the dark, high enough to feel like wealth. When the snow comes, and others dig through drifts for soggy branches, you sit by a flame that doesn't hiss, Your soup simmers. Your boots dry. Your breath softens. Because long before the cold came, you gave it what it needed. Wood. And waiting. You hold the coat up to the light. The tear glares back long. Frayed. Loud. Wind slipped through it last night. You felt it crawl down your spine like water. Now, you fix it. You sit near the fire. Needle in hand. It's bent. A little rusty. But it still bites cloth. You thread it with black wool, not matching. But strong. Color doesn't matter. Warmth does. The hole yawns like a tired mouth. You pinch it shut. Begin to stitch. In. Out. Over. Under. Fingers numb. Eyes half blind. You've done this so many times. Your hands move without asking. Every patch tells a story. The elbow with the blue thread. That was from the hayloft fall. The shoulder with linen from your sister's old shift. That winter the firewood ran out. You don't own new. You own fixed. You own endured. Sometimes, you sew bits of hide into the worst spots. Old glove leather. Sheepskin. Even bark once. In desperation, it cracked. But held long enough. The coat gets heavier each year. Thicker. More yours. Some say it stinks. You say it remembers. You finish the stitch. Knot it twice. Bite the end of the thread to pull it tight. You run your hand over the patch. Rough. Strong. You wrap the coat around you. Feel the air stop just shy of your ribs. And you know. You may not look tidy, but you'll sleep warm. Because every stitch is a promise. And you've kept them all. You don't leave salt on the table. You hang it high. Wrapped tight in cloth. Tied with string. Far from rats. Damp. And greedy fingers. Salt is life. Not spice, not here. Here. It keeps meat from rotting. Keeps wounds from festering. Keeps soup from tasting like despair. You have a pouch the size of your fist. Not full. Never full. But not empty. Either. You trade for it. Eggs. Mended clothes. Promises. Sometimes your mother bargains harder than the merchant. Sometimes she wins. You sprinkle it on pork before the smoke. Rub it into fish when the river gives you more than you need. Dissolve a pinch in boiled water when your sister coughs through the night. It stings. It heals. You've heard of mines. Of oceans. Of places where salt crusts on the wind. But here, it travels far to find you. And you treat it like a guest. The pouch hangs above the hearth. Not too close heat would clump it. Not too far, you want to see it. To know it's still there. Sometimes you open it just to look. To run a finger through the rough white grain. To remind yourself, you're not out yet. One pinch at a time. That's how you stretch it. That's how you live. Because in this world, flavor is a luxury. But salt is survival. You don't eat all the onions. You hang them in a braid, dried and twisted, swinging gently from the rafter above your bed. They move when the wind slips through the thatch. They creak when the fire crackles. And they watch. Not just food, not just spice. Their protection. From rot. From rats. From whatever sickness rides on breath and fog. Your grandmother said onions pull poison from the air. You believed her the night your brother's fever broke, and the onion near his pillow turned black. You hang one over the door, one above the cradle, 3 near the chimney, where the smoke turns stubborn. Their skins rustle like dry paper when you shift in your sleep. You don't mind. They're part of the house now, part of the way you stay well. When you do cook them, you use the soft ones first, boiled into stew, mashed with turnip, or eaten raw when your throat feels wrong. They sting, but they clear you out. And that's the point. You press one now, gently, checking for rot, still firm, still sharp. You nod, satisfied. The onions stay, because in a world full of things you can't see, sometimes a bulb with a bite feels like a good enough shield. You don't walk dry, not unless you prepare. Your boots are tired. The seams gape near the toe. Leather that once kept out snow now lets in whispers of every puddle. So you reach for leaves, not just any, not brittle, not slick. You choose the ones with memory. Bracken, broad dock, maybe dried birch if you're lucky. You crumble them in your hands first. Check for bugs. Check for mold. Then press them flat. Warm them by the fire. And stuff them deep into your boots. They rustle. They cushion. They soak what the world throws at you before it reaches your skin. You walk quieter with them. Softer. The cold still creeps, but not fast enough to catch you unaware. Sometimes, mid-journey, you stop beneath a tree, pull off one boot, dump out the old leaves, and press in new. It's not ceremony. It's survival. You once forgot. Walk 10 miles in wet socks. Your heel peeled like bark. You remember. Now, every morning before you lace up, before you breathe deep, you press the forest to your soles. Because in a world of damp paths and no mercy, even a leaf can be armor. You hold the shard of ice like a blade. It's not sharp, not at first. But your skin feels everything in winter. And even cold can cut. You splash your face with snow melt. It stings. Not because it's dirty, but because it reminds you you're still alive. Then you scrape. The ice slides along your jaw, lifting days of sweat, smoke, and sleep. Not clean, not really, but cleaner. You don't do this every day. Only when the itch grows too much. Only when the hair starts to smell like smoke soaked in grease. Your father used to have a real razor. Steel. Bright as snow in sunlight. He traded it for boots. So now, you make do with glass. Once, with the edge of a broken pot. But nothing works like ice. Hard, silent, gone before it offends. You wipe your face with cloth. Check your reflection in the pot lid. Not pretty, not smooth, but less wild. You toss the ice outside. It melts before hitting the ground. And for the rest of the day, your skin remembers. Not the pain, but the cold edge that made you feel almost civilized. You scrape the tin with your finger. The bottom glistens, pale, sticky, thick as memory. Last week's stew, last month's drippings, mutton, probably, maybe goose. You don't ask. You save the fat in every form, smeared on cloth, soaked into twigs, sealed in jars hidden from mice. You treat it like kindling that remembers fire. When the wood is wet, when the moss won't catch, when the wind howls and the hearth sulks in silence, you smear a bit of fat on a curled-up bark shaving. Then you breathe. It catches. Always slower than you hope. But always. The flame bubbles through the grease. Smokes thick and low. But it lives. You've used rushes dipped in tallow. Cotton threads soaked in bacon fat. Even bones boiled down until they wept oil. Your sleeves smell of smoke and meat. Your hands, always a little slick. You don't mind. It means you're ready. Sometimes, you light a fire that smells like last Sunday's soup. And that makes the cold easier. Because nothing warms a room faster than the ghost of a meal you once thought was gone. You build with stone in summer, not to stay warm, to stay cool. The sun turns cruel by midday. Thatch sags. Wood groans. But stone stays silent. You pack the outer wall with river rock smooth, round, heavy, layered tight, pressed into the mud and straw like teeth into gums. The wall thickens. Your house slows its breath. By noon, the inside stays dim, cool enough to keep butter soft, not melted, cool enough for your child to nap without sweat. You press your back to the wall after chores. It drinks the heat from your skin. You whisper thanks. In winter, the stone chills too fast. But in summer, it guards. You've seen others hang wet cloth over windows. You do too. But the stone does more. It holds the cold of night, lets it bleed into the day. You've considered sleeping outside. But the walls do better. They don't snore. They don't shift. They just stand. One summer, your neighbor tried painting his house with lime to reflect the sun. You just pressed more stones into yours. It worked. Because when the world burns, you fight fire. With rock. You don't waste wax. Not even a drop. Not when the rain finds its way through the thatch again. Not when every leak feels like the sky whispering. You forgot. So you reach for the beeswax. It's not much. a lump the size of your palm, smelling faintly of honey, smoke, and sting, soft in summer, stubborn in winter. You warm it near the fire, knead it with your fingers until it yields, until it feels like thick butter left too long in the sun. Then you climb, up into the loft, between rafters that remember more winters than you do. You find the hole, just a sliver of sky framed in straw. You press the wax in slow, firm, like sealing a wound. You smear it flat. Say nothing. Hope it holds. Sometimes you mix in ash. Sometimes cloth fibers. Anything to stretch it. You've patched boots this way. A cup. Once, even your brother's cracked knuckle. The wax listens. When the rain returns, and it always does, you watch the spot. No drip. You exhale. You saved it. The roof. The room. The night. With nothing more than the ghost of a honeycomb. And hands that refuse to let water win. You don't trust the well in summer. The water turns warm. Smells like iron. Tastes like dust. So you turn your eyes to the sky. You set out a jar. Big, wide-mouthed. Rim-chipped, but still sound. You place it where the thatch overhangs, just past the edge of the cookhouse roof, where the rain drips hardest. The first drops hit like applause, then steady rhythm. You listen from inside, counting heartbeats in each splash. By nightfall, the jar is half full. By morning, it's cold, cooler than anything drawn from below. You don't drink it yet. Not straight. You let it settle the silt. The sky's memory, the dust of everything it passed through. You strain it through cloth. You boil it when you can spare the wood. And then you drink. It tastes like tin, like cloud, like something new. Sometimes you place 2 jars, one for drinking, one for washing. The second one, you dip your fingers into just before sleep. Dab your face. Cool your neck. Like a quiet blessing. It's not magic, but it feels like it. And when the rain forgets to come, you lift the jar. See your reflection in it. And remember that survival isn't always fire and dirt. Sometimes it's catching water before it disappears. You don't have a watchdog. You have bells. A strip of leather, cracked and worn, hung across the doorway with 3 tiny metal rings tied like teeth. They jingle when the door moves, even when it moves slow, especially when it moves slow. You found the bells in a trader's sack years ago, gave him a dried fish and a blessing. He didn't understand the blessing. You didn't explain. Now they guard you. They don't bark. They don't bite. But they whisper just loud enough to wake you. Just soft enough not to scare the baby. You sleep with one ear open. Always. When the bells sound, you don't jump. You rise. Barefoot. Careful. Hand on the old stick by the door. Sometimes it's just wind. Sometimes it's the cat. Once, it wasn't. You remember that night. The jingle was wrong. Too slow. Too patient. You didn't open the door. You waited, silent as stone, until the steps faded into the trees. In the morning, you tightened the leather and added one more bell. Now, when neighbors visit, they smile. They say your house sounds like a priest's robe. You nod. But in your mind, it sounds like safety, like warning, like breath before a word. And that's enough. Because sometimes, all that stands between you and the dark is the soft music of metal, saying, someone is here. You don't bake for taste. You bake to last. Flour, water, salt. That's all. No yeast. No butter. Just enough to hold shape. Just enough to fight time. You knead the dough like it owes you something. Then roll it flat. Cut it into discs. No thicker than a finger. You prick the tops with a knife, so they don't puff. Don't lie. You want them dense. Stubborn. The oven isn't ready. It never is. So you set them by the fire, turning them slow as stones, watching them harden like old bread left in a drawer. When they cool, they're nearly inedible. But they keep. You wrap them in cloth, store them in a tin, hide them in corners where mice can't find them. Some days, they're breakfast. Other days, they're hope. You dip one in broth to soften it. Chew like it's a favor. Not a meal. It fills the space. That's enough. In lean seasons, you break off pieces and count. How many days left? How many bites? The oldest one you ever ate was 3 winters old. Tasted like ash and dust. But it gave you one more morning. And so you keep making them. Because sometimes, food isn't for eating. It's for surviving. And survival, here, is made of flour and fire and silence. You don't have bees. You have turnips. Sweetness isn't common here. Honey is too rare. Sugar, a rumor. So when winter feels long and your mouth forgets delight, you make do. You take the biggest turnip you've got. Ugly, heavy, full of dirt and spite. You scrub it until the skin shines. Then you slice it thin. Layer the pieces in a clay jar. One slice. One sprinkle of ash or crushed seed. Another slice. You press them down. Cover the top with a flat stone. Leave it by the hearth. Each day, the turnip weeps, not tear syrup. Golden. Slow. Thick as thought. You tilt the jar. Collect what gathers at the bottom. Just a spoonful. Just enough to stir into porridge. Or dab on hard bread. It tastes like earth trying to be kind. Bittersweet. But sweet all the same. Children beg for it. You say no, then give them a finger's worth anyway. It doesn't last long. Nothing sweet does. But for one morning, your tongue remembers something soft. Your belly, something gentle. And that's worth the waiting. Worth the slicing. Worth the hope that root and fire can create something close to joy. You don't have a cellar deep enough. So you use ash? After the harvest, the last good greens pulled from the garden. You bring them inside. Beets. Carrots. A few turnips with their greens still clinging. You don't eat them all. Not yet. You save them. You dig a wooden box from beneath the bench. Line it with cool gray hearth ash sifted fine like flour. You place the vegetables inside, careful not to let them touch. Each one surrounded by ash like a burial rite. Layer by layer, root by root, you build a tomb of survival. The ash draws out moisture. Not too much. Just enough. Keeps mold from creeping. Keeps mice from sniffing. Keeps you fed when the frost kills memory. You cover the box. Slide it under the table, where the cold from the floor kisses the wood. Then you wait. Weeks pass. Snow comes. The cabbages rot. The bread turns stone. But one morning, when the stew is thin and everyone is quiet, you open the box, brush away the ash, pull out a carrot. Still firm, still orange. You wash it. Cut it slow. Let the smell fill the room like sunlight. Someone smiles. You pretend you didn't see it? Because in this place, spring doesn't come when the birds return. It comes when you reach into gray dust and find color waiting. You run out of wood before you run out of cold. Always. So you look elsewhere. To the pile of husks, light as air, left behind after threshing. Rice hulls, barley skins. The thin, brittle ghosts of grain. You scoop them by the armful. Press them into old baskets. Dampen them just a little. Not to soak. Just enough to make them cling to each other like stories in silence. Then you shape them into bricks, into lumps, into fire. They don't burn like oak. They don't crackle. Don't roar. They smolder. Quiet. Persistent. You set one on the edge of the hearth. Watch it catch. Slowly. Like thought in a tired mind. The smoke rises pale. Smells like harvest. Tastes like waiting. It won't boil your stew, but it'll warm your fingers. Dry your boots. Keep frost from the edge of your breath. You've learned to feed the fire what the fields forget, what others sweep away. Ash from husks makes good soap. Good soil. Good reminder that even the lightest things can burn. So when the woodpile fades and the night presses in close, you reach for what's left. You hold a bowl of what once fed you, and you feed it back to flame. You don't have an oven. You have a stone. Flat, heavy, buried in ash until it holds the memory of fire. You pull it from the coals with tongs made from bent iron. Set it on a bed of brick. Wait. Test the heat with a drop of water. If it hisses, it's ready. You roll out dough barley. Maybe rye. No yeast. No fluff. Just enough to hold together. You lay it on the stone. It sizzles faintly. The edge begins to rise. Not like a cloud, but like a shrug. You sit. Watch. Turn it once. Maybe twice. Tap the crust with your finger. Done? The bottom blackens. You scrape it with a knife. Blow off the ash. And bite. It's hard. Dry. But warm. You dip it in broth. Let the center soften. Chew slow. No fire. No food. No stone. No bread. Sometimes, when the wind howls and the roof shifts overhead, you place your hand on the warm rock and think, this is enough. You've baked like this 100 times. And every time, it works. Because heat doesn't need a box. Just a place to stay. And in this world, even the earth can feed you. If you know how to listen, you've lost your gloves. Again. Maybe to the fire. Maybe to the barn. Maybe to your brother, who won't admit it. The wind bites. The wood you carry splits skin from knuckle. So you reach for the ash bucket. It's not warm, but it's dry. And in this season, dry is a kind of mercy. You plunge your hands in. Soft. Cold powder rising up your wrists. It clings to your fingers, fills the lines of your palms like a second skin. You rub them together. The sting eases. The cracks hide. The sweat dries. Ash coats you like armor. Not strong, but familiar. It blocks the wind just enough. Keeps the splinters out. Tells the world, this one still has work to do. Later, by the fire, you dust it off slowly. Tiny gray clouds fall to the floor like silence. You press your fingers to the warmth, and they don't scream. You smile. Just a little. The others think gloves mean cloth and stitching. You know better. Gloves are what you make. When the world gives you nothing but what's left behind. And ash. Ash remembers the shape of your hands. Better than anything else ever will. You survive because you remember not facts, not dates, but things no one ever wrote down. How to stack wood so it dries in wind. How many rushlights burn before dawn. How long to boil water after the cow drinks upstream. You remember the sound of bread when it's ready. The smell of cabbage before it sours. The color of the sky before frost arrives. You remember your mother's fingers pressing wax into the roof. Your father's cough in February. The way your sister buried onions under ash with a song. You remember which herbs help sleep. Which leaves repel lice. Which corners of the house grow mold first. There's no book for this. No parchment. No priest to praise it. But you carry it. in your spine, your hands, your habits. And when someone younger asks how to keep meat for spring, you tell them with words, with gestures, with the quiet urgency of someone who's seen what happens when knowledge slips. You are not wise. You are not old. You are not chosen. But you remember. And so, the fire stays lit. The butter stays cool. The bed stays dry. And when winter comes again, as it always does, you'll do what you've always done. Not because it's easy, not because it's noble, but because you know how, and that, in this life, is everything. You never planned to learn all this. No one gave you a scroll. No one read you laws by firelight. You didn't sit at a table and take notes on how to survive the coldest night of the year, or the longest stretch without bread. You learned because you had to, because someone older showed you, and someone smaller needed you, because the fire wouldn't keep itself alive. You learned that warmth isn't just fire. It's moss in your boots. It's onion above your door. It's meat hung in smoke so thick you can't breathe straight. You learned that time isn't kept with clocks. It's measured in rushlights, in footsteps, in the hush between someone leaving and someone returning. You learned how to keep milk from turning, how to keep straw from molding, how to keep your family from slipping into the silence that always waits just outside the walls. And you didn't just remember it. You passed it on. The child who watched you blow on coals now lights their own fire. The neighbor you gave your last pinch of salt to, she brought you herbs when the fever came. You didn't ask. She didn't knock. She just knew. Because you do this together. Not always kindly. Not always cleanly. But always. Even the goat in your bed and the dog under your feet are part of the pact. You share breath. You share heat. You share what little you have. Because no one survives a medieval winter alone. You remember the faces that didn't make it. The cough that lasted too long. The child who slipped on ice and never got up. The man who went out to chop wood and came back frostbitten and ashamed. And so you double-check the door. You stuff the cracks with old cloth. You boil water even when no one is sick, just in case. You stay ready. Not out of fear. Out of duty. To them. To yourself. To the quiet voice inside you that whispers, you know what to do. Do it again. You've learned to read smoke. To hear change in the wind. To feel cold before it arrives. Your hands are cracked. Your clothes smell of every meal you've ever cooked. Your back aches when you bend to lift the firewood. But you still bend. Because survival isn't one big act. It's 1,000 tiny ones, stacked like dry kindling in a fire that needs you. You've forgotten what it's like to feel clean, but you remember what it's like to feel warm. And between the two, you choose warm. You've given up many things. Baths, soft shoes, silence. But you haven't given up yet. You haven't gone still. And even in this small world of ash and straw and wax and bone, you still find ways to hold joy. The smell of onions after snow. The way your fire catches on the first try. The moment you unwrap the last carrot and it's still firm. You count those things. Not out loud. But in your heart. You don't survive because you're strong. You survive because you're stubborn. Because you're clever. Because someone once taught you how. And now you refuse to forget. And in that refusal, in that quiet, daily resistance, you've built something sacred. Not a castle. Not a monument. Just a life that keeps going. One breath. One ember. One more night at a time. You're still here. That alone is a kind of miracle. You've tended the fire. You've kept your feet dry. You've breathed shallow when the cold threatened your lungs. You've made broth from bones. Warmth from ash. Hope from nothing but moss and smoke. Not every day was noble. Some days you snapped. Some days you slept in your boots and didn't care. Some days you burned the stew and cursed the fire like it was personal. But you stayed. You kept going. You learned what mattered. Not lace. Not beauty. Not even full bellies. Just survival. Just staying upright when the wind howled and the roof groaned. You held the child when they cried through fever. You patched the coat before the storm hit. You remembered to move the butter closer to the cool corner. You didn't do it all perfectly, but you did enough. And now, the room is quiet. The air holds its breath. The fire, still flickering, waits for you to rest. Outside, the world turns slowly. The frost settles without urgency. The stars blink behind clouds they'll soon forget. And here, wrapped in wool and old straw and the smell of onions and smoke, you lie still. Your hands ache. Your feet are warm. Your breath soft now rises and falls like the hills you've never left. You don't need to think about the roof tonight, or the rushlight, or whether the salt pouch is still full. You've done your part. And the house, patched and crooked, remembers you. The hearth remembers. The walls lean in a little, like they're listening. You are not heroic. You are not famous. But you are the reason someone else will wake up tomorrow and know what to do. So close your eyes. Let the dark come gently. Let the heat of the stone under your bed hold you just a little longer. You've survived a day in the Middle Ages. Again. And tonight, that's enough.